Hi, everybody. This is Laurie Handlers, and you are tuned in to another episode of Sex and Happiness, a show about your sex and your happiness, and mine and my guests. We're all into sex and happiness. As far as I could tell, everyone I know is trying to be sexier and happier, and good on them. Finally, that you're catching on. So let me introduce my guest for today, and then I'll tell you what we're talking about. Her name is Amanda Biccum, and she is an evolutionary coach and embodiment facilitator. She's dedicated to helping men and women release sexual shame and discover deeper connections to themselves, their passion, and their pleasure. So welcome to the show, Amanda.
Thank you, Laurie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about today, pleasure. We're going to talk about reawakening your pleasure. And what does that mean? So it's really important. This isn't the first show that I've done about pleasure. Pleasure is really important. And as many of you know, I believe that what I teach is transformation through pleasure. And when you're on the path of it, everything that isn't pleasure comes up. And it's like right here in your face. And you're like, uh-oh, this isn't pleasurable. Now what? Uh-oh, this is painful. Now what? All these things come up when you're trying to look at what pleasure means. So we're going to explore this today, and we're going to find out how Amanda feels about it and what she's doing about it. And then you'll have more options in which to explore your own self and see, do you even have permission for pleasure? So Amanda, first tell us a little bit about how you got to be who you are. Like, how did you get here on this, pleasure pursuit?
Oh, well, it started off in a very non-pleasurable pursuit, very goal-driven, very oriented, very much in my masculine, very much in trying to be the type A good girl who does everything right and dots her T's, crosses her T's and dots her I's. And background in spirituality and yoga. And I was a yoga teacher in San Francisco for some time. And I traveled around the world, went to India multiple times, lived in India for about 3 years, really following the pursuit of yoga. And also a nutritionist. My background is in nutrition. And while I was trying to be, perfect and type A and do everything right, I was completely missing out on pleasure in so many different aspects, from how I was eating to how I was living my life to how I was showing up in the relationship to my body. And I was very dogmatic in my approach. I was very much like, yoga is way. They say brahmacharya. Who needs sexuality? I was so, I was trying to do everything right. And little did I know I was starving my feminine of all the deep desires that she gets to experience by being in this three-dimensional form.
Wow, that's amazing. You just reminded me when you were speaking. A couple of times I've interviewed Charles Muir, who is considered to be the father of modern tantra, and Charles had the same experience. He was a yogi. He was dedicated. He was brahmacharya, and one day he found out his yoga teacher was having sex with his students, and Charles said, "Okay, what's good for the goose is good for the gander." Like, what is going on here? Why is this man telling everyone to not have sex while he's having sex in the in the shadows, and he's making everything else wrong? And that's how Charles became a tantra teacher. Charles said, "Well, I'm gonna pursue sex." So you're the second person to come on my show, but Charles hasn't been on in a long time. You're the second person to come on my show and say, "I was a strict yogi, and I was celibate." And I was keeping myself for the gods or whatever.
Yeah.
Wow. So when did your wake up happen? What year did you wake up in?
Oh, so I remember I was actually on the dance floor, and I remember this was probably about 5 years ago. And the first hit came to me when I wrote a blog, and it was called "Never Again Will I Settle for Sex." Because I had this hot, juicy romance. I was in India and I just finished my teacher training, and I met this Spanish man, and it was like so animalistic and so hot and so fiery. But then there was a piece of my soul that I didn't really feel was actually felt and seen and heard and honored. And I had this very animalistic experience, but there was a part of me that knew that there was something deeper, that knew that there was parts of the level of my being that weren't fully met. And I had heard about Osho. I had stumbled upon Osho probably 5 years before that, and I had learned about tantra, but it was kind of elusive to me. And then I remember being on the dance floor. I was in India again. This was some years later, and I was dancing, and I remember feeling this deep connection with this man. Like there was so much life force energy, and it was so sensual and so sexy. And I remember thinking, oh, is this okay? Like, is it just me? Am I the only one? Is this allowed? You know? And there was like this animal part of me that was dancing with his inner animal. And yet I had no idea that I had no connection to this part of me, this desire part of me.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment that I was so afraid of it. And I knew I had to go there. And that's kind of how it began.
That's great. You woke up on the dance floor. You woke up in this animal place. I mean, I feel like that's great. For a lot of people, it's, they find out that something's dysfunctional, or they can't, they're dried up, or something weird happens. So these were your own choices, and I'm glad that you chose to follow your desire, as opposed to, yeah, you too. Yeah, as opposed to, staying like that, and it's true, like not only religions, but yoga too denies the feminine aspect, the connection to and I mean the feminine aspect in everyone, men and women, and people who are gender bending, like the idea of not being connected to your root, not being connected to your sacral chakra, to the things,
the body,
the whole thing, everything below here is sin, and everything up here is okay, and we're going to ascend.
Yes. And it's not just yoga. I traveled for close to 5 years, and I learned from Buddhism and Hinduism and yogic philosophy, and I went to monasteries and ashrams, and they all taught the same thing. And, there was this moment where I was sitting in meditation. I think I was doing Vipassana at this point, which is very, very much like, be out of your mind, just follow sensations, feel what's real and what's not real. And it was in this moment that I remembered having this kind of intuitive hit on, hold on a second. If I am pure consciousness and I come from source, which is consciousness, then wouldn't I have consciously chose to come into this 3-dimensional experience in this body? Then why am I trying constantly like move away from it and like get out of it? And it was in these kind of little things, little hints that I was getting from spirit that totally dropped me into the fact that this experience was chosen and this body was chosen. And if I'm consciousness choosing to consciously incarnate in this body, then why don't I fully allow myself to explore the 3-dimensional possibilities, especially when it comes to pleasure? Like, why would I deny myself of that human right?
Super. It's great. It's a great question. So let's talk about that a little bit. Why do people, aside from, not everyone is a yogi, and a lot of people are religious. I'm not going to make a judgment about that. I have judgments about it, but I'm not going to make a judgment about it publicly. But I'm a person who's like totally into the pursuit of pleasure. And I'm not a hedonist. Although I go to hedonism, I have been to hedonism many times. I'm not like, I don't necessarily pursue pleasure for pleasure's sake. I pursue pleasure because of what it teaches me.
100%. Yes. Yeah.
So it's like, it teaches me where I have permission to be alive, where I have permission to be fully like embodied. And when I'm saying no to it, I love Tantra because Tantra said, I could do anything. I could drink red wine if I want to when I'm teaching. Like I could do anything I want. And so it sometimes feels like Tantra and yoga are diametrically opposed. And I feel like I know that yoga came from Tantra. So I don't think that, I just feel like some people took it over and they gave it a different interpretation, just like what people do with religion. Yeah, they give this an interpretation. And then in order to control people, we're
100%.
told, this from here down is bad and from here up is good. And like, well, how did we get here? Those people telling us this, they got here the same way.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I remember like the moment that I declared that I was going to reclaim my embodiment. Yeah. Like my being in this body. And my whole thing is, if I'm spirit, then this body is also spirit. It is also divine. And that's one of the things that I loved. And that to be honest, that's really what drew me into Tantra, was the fact that sex and spirit weren't separate. It was the one place that I found, and I am such a devotional person. Everything I do is about devoting. If I'm making love to you, I'm honoring your inner God, goddess, whoever you are. If I'm, in my morning and I'm on my mat, even I still do practice yoga or qigong, or I am devoting my life. But everything I do is a ceremony and a prayer. And this was the one place in my life where I found that my soul, the deepest parts of me, could also connect with my animal, which is the makeup of this physical experience. And this was the one where I felt like these two could dance. And it honestly, diving into pleasure and diving into the exploration of what is capable in this physical dimension has absolutely changed my life in every single way. And I know that you can agree to that. And I know that's why you're on this path as well.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, everything in my life changed. And I was the same thing. I wasn't, I feel like because I wasn't a nutritionist or stuff like that, but I was a very strict vegetarian. I was very in corporate America, definitely successful, type A. So, I mean, I can identify with most of what you said. I just like, there were ways that I didn't hold myself rigid. I was never rigid about sexuality, but I now know that there are things that I kept myself from for some fear that I didn't allow myself to go. I just didn't allow myself to go there. And when I started to do things like go to hedonism, I was like, wow, look at what these people are doing. Look at what they have permission for. Why don't I have permission for this? Well, now I do. So go ahead.
No, you go.
So I want to say to you, so what stops people from owning their pleasure?
And I think this is a huge piece. It's for me, it's shame. It's fear from your society, from your culture, from your religion, from your parents, from your peers. It's like we all, I don't care who you are or where you come from or what background is, we all have desires. Desire is a part of our human nature, but we create this polarizing experience that this is good and this is bad and this is right and this is wrong. And I'm sure you can relate when you went to hedonism. You're just like, holy shit, what are people doing? And it's like they're being in their pleasure. They're not in their mind. They're not in what is taboo and what is not and what is good and what is bad. They're fully allowing themselves to experience whatever is happening in that moment and allowing that to unfold from there. And I feel like the biggest thing that keeps people from their pleasure is their judgments and the judgments that they're afraid that other people will press upon them. And I know working in people with relationships, like we have a very black and white kind of traditional narrative of what relationships are. You're monogamous and you're together for life, or you're not, And I know you and I and many other are actually in a very different normative of what it means to be. Where's the gray area in relationship to our bodies, in relationship to our pleasure, and our relationships in general?
Yeah. I mean, it's just, yes. So what I found out is, there's a lot of other things in life other than what I was raised as or other than what I thought about. And also, I mean, I received, it's funny. My mother and grandmother were always frightened about my sexuality and how I would turn out and what trouble I would get into and whatever. And I didn't. get into trouble. I didn't get pregnant before I finished high school or whatever. But I remember in college, my roommates took over the job. You know, like when I would stay out all night or whatever, my roommates would then leave notes on my bed and I would go, "You're not my mother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why?" Like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. I'm still going to pass the finals with flying colors because I'm smart. But I'm going to do what I want to do. I'm going to dance every single day and night. I'm going to go out and I might stay out all night and you might not know where I am. And so what? If I'm in trouble,
Yeah.
I'll let you know. So, yeah, I feel like people just can't, they're really afraid of public opinion. And then they're really afraid of internalized public opinion, like what they think others will think.
Yeah,
So they
and I have to be honest, it was a journey for me as well. You know, when I really knew that I had to come out and speak about sexuality, I knew that when I was talking about nutrition and yoga and spirituality, my family, my mom, my aunts, they were behind me. They were on my Facebook lives, like, look at my daughter, look at my niece. I'm so proud. And the moment I started talking about sexuality, crickets. I felt a definite distancing between me and my family. And I've even addressed it to them personally. And, you know, this is why I do this work. It's because there's so much shadows. And when I think about my mom or when I think about my grandma and I think about the sexual experiences they've had and how they've been, you know, in some ways, and I think we all have to some degree before we're conscious, been used and abused and allowed ourselves to have experiences that we weren't full body fuck yeses to. And it's like, I cry at the feeling that there's a level of depth and connection that is possible in intimate and sexual experiences that they probably have never and potentially will never have.
No,
And that's why I do this work. You know,
yeah,
I'm sure you can relate.
yeah. Well, my mother was already dead when I became a Tantra teacher, but my father was my student. Actually, this week I sent out a newsletter talking about that because now that I'm into teaching Tantra meets BDSM, a lot of my old guard, you know, people who have been with me for years and years and years, they're not really interested in that course. They can't see that it has any, you know, anything to offer them. They can't, they make jokes about it. And so I wrote and said, well, to all of you, Tantra was an edge for you. Like when you came to study Tantra with me, it was a total edge. Like you were worried about what other people would think and you didn't know who would be there at the class. And by the way, my father took that edge also. And he did that after my mother died, and he realized like he needed to relate to people. He needed to connect again. He needed to have sex. He needed to have women in his life. And so he came to me. And that was a huge edge in my life and in his life. So are you still going to sit there and say that nothing I'm offering these days, whether it's ISTA or Tantra meets BDSM, is not relevant to you just because you're complacent?
Yeah.
And that could be what our relatives are also, you know, like your relatives, whatever their situations are, they may be in some complacency about, well, I have this narrow path that I'm doing in my life and like I can't really open to anything else because if I do, it might rock all the boats and tip all the apple carts. That's exactly what we're doing because human beings get really bored and human beings get really resentful and human beings get complacency is definitely not the answer.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's what we do, living on the edge, like expanding into the potential of what's possible. And I think so many of us grow up with a narrative that you have to struggle and that in order to be successful, in order to have businesses, in order to be whatever it is, happy, rich, whatever it is, it has to be a certain way. And I think that we here in the Tantra world really challenge the opposite. What if I can do the things I love and have lots of fucking pleasure doing it? And also still, you know, create the lifestyle that is so prized and or so that I desire. And I think that's really what a lot of us are kind of trying to challenge the status quo of.
So how would somebody begin? Like, how would they begin to make this pursuit of pleasure? Well, let's just talk about putting their toes in the water. How would they put their toes in the water?
Well, I think there are like many different ways depending on where people are at. But the first thing that comes to me is just write down all of the places in your life that you feel like you're lacking pleasure. And it could be something as simple as like in your relationship to food. And that was
Mhm.
where I started. I was so strict because I had learned all of these rules and all of these stories, and I had studied, and the people who knew about food and health told me that this was the way to be, you know? And I was absolutely afraid of food, if I'm honest. You know, if I were to have a freaking piece of chocolate cake or a bite of it, I would have so many guilty thoughts in my mind about
Really?
it. Yeah, yeah, for sure. And so
You differ there.
I know I've come a long way, you know, but this is our programming and our conditioning. So I think that ask yourself, what is my relationship to pleasure in general? Do I accept it? Do I deny it? Do I fear it? Ask yourself that question and use this as a journaling prompt, write it down. And then the second question is, what are all the ways in which I prevent myself from receiving pleasure? This could be in your relationship to your body, in your relationship to work, in your relationship to food, in your relationships to sex, in your relationships to money, whatever it is. I mean, money is pleasurable in general. And that's another area that I got to clean up in my life. Like I used to have all these stories about money, and I would feel guilty if I received what I thought was too much because so many other people were struggling. Like money is freaking pleasurable. And I got to also kind of change my reality. So first, be aware of all the ways in which you're preventing pleasure in your life.
Mhm.
And then ask yourself, what can I do to begin to shift this reality or to shift this story?
It's great. It's really great. Those are really good tips. So, everybody who's listening or watching, I really hope that you took note of that. Like, how are you preventing yourself from having pleasure? In which ways? In every aspect of your life. You know, if you're not having it, like, what are you doing? I mean, I
Yeah.
just have to, I always say to people, if you're suffering, you're adding suffering to the planet, and the planet has enough suffering.
Yeah, 100%. You know, we were hanging out the other day. I was with my girlfriend, and we had a guy over, and we had a fire going, and we had wine on, and we had coconut oil, and we're like rubbing on each other's bodies, and we're like, well, what do other people do? Like, how do they spend their evenings? Like, this is so much fun. We're getting touch, we're getting connection, oxytocin, serotonin. Like, these are the connective based hormones. Like some people, and not that there's right or wrong or good or bad, but just ask yourself this, like when you go over to a friend's house and watch TV, that's sure, that's doing something for you, but what about having deep connective feeling, touch, breath, like sharing an experience? Like we know that that changes the neurochemistry in your brain. And so we honestly wonder what other people do, you know, on their weekends or on their days to themselves, because once you've tapped into this doorway, what else would I be doing with my time? You know?
Well, you also just keep in mind that you're in Bali, and there the restrictions are a little looser there than they are in many places. So some people, I know, I have friends who haven't seen anyone, who haven't been really out of their apartment. People in New York. I'm not in New York. I'm in Phoenix. So I just had people over for the weekend when we watched the event of the year, Radfest. We watched that together. But a lot of people that I know have not seen anybody, have not been out. And in New York, they have their food delivered. So they haven't been out since March.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
hopefully when they do come out, they will do massage with friends and they will have touch,
I
you know.
hope so. You know, I hope that this is, I mean, there's so many amazing online conferences. I know you're going to be speaking at Magnetized Pleasure, and there are several other people who are at least giving you content streaming directly into you about how to connect with you. I mean, I teach self-pleasure. This is a huge part. You don't need someone else. I'm actually in Amsterdam right now, and we're also code
Oh,
red.
I didn't
Yeah,
know that.
but
I thought you were still in Bali.
no, I came back here about a month ago, and it is a different reality, 100%. But this is the opportunity for us to go inwards and really start to question the conditionings that we've been thought and believed to be true. And this is why your podcast and all these other live streams and all these other online tantra festivals and experiences are such a powerful moment for all of us to retake back, like, what does it truly mean for me to be happy, and to change our perspective and decondition some of the conditioned realities that we've been taught or believed to be true.
I think that COVID is an opportunity for everyone to give the voice that hasn't been heard in themselves an opportunity to speak. And this it's a chance for people to reevaluate everything. And this is one of the things. So yes, absolutely. I agree with you. Yeah, I've been in, I don't know, too many online festivals to even count right at this point. And I have another 3, I think, coming up. And it's the interesting thing about these festivals has been that 75% of the people who have registered for them are new people. They're not the same old people. They're not all the people that have been through everything or who have been to all the live festivals. 75% of the people in the online festival world have never been to any of these classes before. So that gave me great hope. That really gave me a lot of great hope and encouragement. And, my mailing list grew tremendously, just like from these festivals, because there were so many people that had never seen me before or never heard of me before. So I think this is true. I think what you're saying, that this has happened. There's many great things that have happened in the past 6 months or so. And then there's, other things.
It's also a polarizing experience. Welcome to the dualistic 3-dimensional realm that we've been gifted.
Exactly. All right, so let's talk about what people can contact you about. How can they get in touch with you to find out more about what you do, what you are, and what's coming up, what you're offering? If there's anything evergreen, and then if there's something like in the future, some way they can get in touch with you and get on board with something that you're offering, I think that would be really good to say.
Yeah, absolutely. So there is, for all the women out there, we have a summit, which is coming up. It's another online experience where there will be 10 world-class facilitators from around the world in embodiment and pleasure and sexuality. Laurie, we've invited you to be a part of that, and it's called Magnetized Pleasure. This is for women. We really, the intention of this experience is to really help women reconnect to owning the fact that it's okay to be wild and free and sexual, and it actually can be very safe as long as we know how to own our boundaries and state our yeses and our nos. So that's coming up, and that's the most recent thing that we have. And so anybody who's interested, they can actually go to madamebiccum.space/Laurie H. So for anybody who's listening, they can check that out there. And then also we have a lot of stuff.
I want you to spell that because not everybody will know how you're spelling that. So
very smart. Yeah. MADAM. And then B as in boy, ICCUM as in Mike .space. Laurie, your name, LAURIEH. And so, yeah, that's for the women. It's I was disconnected from my pleasure for far too long. And I hope that this gives women an opportunity to reconnect to this and their power as well. And then, of course, we do have a program that I run with a good girlfriend of mine here in Amsterdam. It's called the Initiation for Men. And this is really giving men the secret codes to help them connect to the feminine in relationships, in themselves, in understanding how, polarity and sexuality, and how to run your sexual energy and be the master of your sexual energy instead of your sexual energy owning you. This is like the sex education you wish you would have had growing up, but probably didn't. And so that can be found at our main website, which is instituteofintegratedintimacy.com.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for doing what you're doing. It's so important. It's so important in this world. The word is getting out, let's just say. And it's great. It's great.
It really is. And it really supports as well to have a beautiful, amazing crone woman like yourself to be, spearheading it. And I think we have all these different levels of people who are on their different paths at different points in their lives. And it's inspiring to everyone, because I can't tell you how many people I've met who, let's say, are over 40 and they just kind of like, I don't know. I've been there. I've done that. You're in your 30s. Like, yeah, of course you think that way. And so it's so inspiring that there's a whole generation of people who are above us and who are like, no, you can be sexual and you can be hot and you can be until you're however old. Like, it's up to you to choose.
No,
So
there's
it's
no
very
until. There isn't any until. That's like
perfect.
people should be having sex forever. And I plan to live a very long time, longer than most humans. So I will be having sex for all that time. And I think it's crazy to give that up. You need all those things, everything you mentioned before, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, dopamine. You need all those things in your body. And like, just because you're a number doesn't mean that you stop doing that. Like, who said? So you're not going to procreate? Great. You can have more fun. You don't have to worry about getting pregnant. It's ridiculous.
Exactly.
People think they stop. I don't even know where they got that idea from, but I'm not going to where I think it came from. Wrong thinking. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for being my guest today. We will put the link to your Women's Summit in the chat, or I don't know where we'll put it, like in the comments at the radio station. And then when this gets posted, and I wish you all the best in this. I'm excited for you. And I'm also excited that you're in Europe. So I can't wait to get back there. I'm not coming to Amsterdam. I don't even know how you got in, actually.
I have a secret path, and because it is very hard for us Americans. So I did a little bit of loop-de-loop and I got in undercover.
Okay. So. Yeah, we should talk about that because I'm supposed to be leading an ISTA there within 2 weeks and I had to give it away to somebody because I couldn't get in. So we'll talk about that at a different time. Anyway, everybody, thank you for being my listeners today. I want you to tune in next time when I'll be interviewing another very powerful woman, Michelle Alva, who's going to be speaking about the Alva method. But actually, we're going to be speaking about this taboo topic of squirting. So I'd love for you to all tune in next time. And I don't think I've ever talked about that on the show before. So we're going to have an in-depth conversation about what that is. I will see you then next time. Thank you so much. This is Laurie Handler signing off for Sex and Happiness, saying blowing kisses to you, Amanda. Thank you for being my guest today.